What's up, fam? Just setting up here so I can actually see this live in the Facebook group. But we're going to talk about why is it that people struggle to learn sales, or what exactly is the holdup, right, in being great at sales. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up in the group so I could actually see any comments that pop up here. So if you guys drop them below, I'll answer them. So give me 1 sec here as I pull this up. Okay. All right, cool. We are good. All right, fam. So we're going to go through why exactly is it that people struggle with the sales process, right? So drop a 1 below. Just let me know in the comments if you can hear me. I don't have any actual audio, like any microphones or anything hooked up right now. But I made a list here to go over a lot of the common elements that we notice when we work with our clients as to what the main holdup is, right? Anytime that we bring on a new client, we're helping them with sales, whether they're experienced or whether they're not experienced, whether they're an introvert or whether they're an extrovert, right? There's so many moving pieces. So number 1, the first thing that we notice is, who do I follow, right? That's the first thing that people are trying to figure out. Who fits my style? Who do I follow? Who's actually legit? This is the first thing that happens. So when you do start to find that person that you gravitate towards, what ends up happening is you want to do everything the way they do it. All right, so which is totally normal, right? You want to take on all the characteristics of that person, their approach, their mindset, their methodologies, their tactics, their strategies, their habits. Like, it's pretty normal to take that stuff on. But what we want to start doing is learning how to emulate and not emulate a person. So I actually read this out of a book, Steal Like an Artist, which actually is probably my red stack. So I have a couple different stacks and they're all organized, but it's down here somewhere. Oh yeah, here it is. Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. So this book is great for understanding how to be able to basically mirror and match that person's habits, tactics, strategies, methodologies, etc. Everything from that person, and then learn how to become your own person. So Steal Like an Artist is be able to emulate, right, what you're seeing there, to be your own person. I get this a lot, like, Rob, you seem like you bring a whole new style to the game of sales. I get that all the time, but the thing is, I've had so many mentors over the last decade, because I've been doing the 100% sales commission game for a decade at this point. And I've had so many mentors that you wouldn't even know what mentors I've had. You would just assume that this is my own style, and it is, right? Because I know who I am, but I've implemented so many things from so many people, it's become my own. Right? Because I've seen so many things that work, don't work, what's outdated, what's actually working in today's era, right? What works in these types of different economies, right? So there's so many different, what stands the test of time, because there's concepts that don't die. There's certain tactics and strategies that do die, right? So it comes down to all these different things and what make you your own person. So when you run into this first bottleneck of who do I follow, you do want to gravitate to the person that obviously matches your style, but understand you're going to find a lot of those at different times of your season. In the same way that you pick up a different book, depending on what you're currently prioritizing in your life. The same way you bring on a different specific mentor, depending on what what season of business you're in, or what season in your education you're in. You wouldn't pick up a book on how to retain and upsell clients and creating irresistible ascension offers, right? If you're still at the point of trying to acquire new acquisition, you're going to pick up books on new acquisition, right? So this is no different. You're going to gravitate to different types of sales experts that just happen to be at that season of your journey, okay? So the first thing is, don't feel like you're going to be stuck to one person when it comes to your mentors. You should have a lot of them. Take some time to read. I made a video somewhere else on YouTube about dead mentors and live mentors and the difference and the benefits to both. But these are your dead mentors, unless they're still alive and they're writing books. But I have so many books from people that are no longer with us, but they have written about concepts that stand the test of time. All right, there's some books that just stand the test of time. Okay, that's the first thing. So that's the first miss. By the way, I have 4 of them for you guys today. So this is number 1. Number 2, man, this is I would say the next step. Okay, and what people start to find as to why they're not able to get this whole how do I learn sales thing right is, do I use scripts? If so, what scripts do I use? From whom do I use them? But here's the thing, guys. It really comes down to a framework. So, and you hear people say that all the time, use a framework. But the thing is, when it comes to scripts, a script is actually developed from a framework. Okay, so a framework is going to be the essence of things that you follow, the concepts, right, that you follow in order to achieve the end result. As you listen to more sales calls and you have enough sales call repetition, you then begin to realize you're hearing a lot of the same things over and over again. So you're able to inject specific types of statements, phrases, buzzwords inside of your framework in order to develop a script. Everybody should have scripts, but your scripts need to be developed in that order. Okay? So I just want to make sure we understand the difference here when I say script and framework. So scripts are very industry specific. So if you hear somebody say, we use a script or we sell a script, right? And they're working with specific types of individuals, like let's say mentors are working with specific types of clients. That works. Okay, you're going to hear a lot of people dog on scripts because they're talking about scripts from a high level concept of script versus framework. They're not talking about it from the concept of, are you selling the exact same client every single time? If you're dealing with a coach, right, that is teaching coaches how to sell, then you're going to realize they have to teach frameworks, because coach, if you're talking about coaches as a whole in general, way too broad. Okay, you're talking about service-based industry where you have a coach that is teaching service-based professionals how to sell their service to prospects and clients, then it's still too super broad. Okay, but if you're talking about I only work with coaches that deal with fitness, then you can say the same things over and over again because that's the specific industry. When I worked in the gym industry, I could say the exact same things over and over again, and it worked every single time, and I could duplicate it with my team because we're all selling to the same person over and over again. But if I were to take those exact same lines and implement them to my team when I was selling Kirby vacuums, fail. Epic fail. But if I can teach the concepts and then restructure a script around the concepts, the framework, success. Okay? So when it comes to scripts and frameworks, understand that difference. All right, so if you're newer to sales, trying to figure out sales, you got to understand, is what I'm getting from this person a script? And should I use this script? Are they selling to the exact same person I am? And I'm talking about, are they selling coaching? It's too vague. Or are they selling a service-based industry to a service-based industry? Too vague, right? If you're dealing with, like, let's just use digital marketing as an example. So if you're buying a digital marketing script from a mentor that teaches digital marketing, you've got to understand that they need to be selling to the same niche. If they're selling to dentists, use the script if you're selling to dentists. If they're selling to real estate agents, and they give you a service-based script for real estate agents to sell to dentists, you're going to miss. It'll work a little bit because some of the concepts are still universal, but the actual words you're saying, what to say, what to stay away from, how to defuse the bomb before it blows up with addressing objections that will happen, right? Because those fall into language patterns. If the script is dealing with those specific things, you're going to win. But if it's different, you're going to lose. I don't want to say lose because you'll still have more success than you would without it. But just understand the difference. Okay, so that's the difference between scripts and frameworks. And if you're asking yourself, which one do I use and from whom? Understand it needs to be specific to you, or use a framework from a coach that, you know, like us at the sales agency, you know, how we train our clients, use a framework that's universal and be able to translate those concepts into your industry and build a script out based on your industry, niche specific. Big difference, okay? So that's number 3. Next one here, we got information overload. And actually was wrong. I have 5 things here. So next one is information overload. This is another thing that we notice all the time, all right? And, I can actually say from experience with training teams that we've noticed when I initially started training teams and made that transition from sales pro to sales manager, a lone business owner, is that if you try to take someone's talents and try to just say, hey, use this thing, you're probably going to ruin the sales rep. And this would happen to me too when people said, hey, change your approach to this. And it was a big miss. So what you want to do is you want to come in and inject the golden nuggets. The things that you hear that match your style, inject them, don't change it completely. All right, so I'll give you an example of this. When it comes to a framework, okay, let's say somebody's just killing it with closing deals. What I want to look at is what's the one thing that's missing that we could add today that could make an immediate impact. Changing everything is not the solution. That's like saying, oh man, my relationship isn't good because we see differences in money. So maybe I should just get a new relationship. Like if you say that out loud to yourself and you're listening to this, you're probably thinking that's silly. But if you go in and change your entire sales process, it's the same concept. You don't change the whole thing just because one thing isn't working. You fix the one thing. And if you're trying to figure out how to solve it long term, you get to the root of that thing, because a lot of time it's mindset. We'll get into that in a sec. But you got to fix the root of the issue. Same thing with, that's really with anything in life. Okay? Facebook ads. If you run Facebook ads, if you don't, then this probably won't relate to you. But if you run Facebook ads, you'll understand this. When an ad isn't working, you don't replace the whole thing. You go in, and if you notice that the click-through, the CTR all is low, odds are your ad copy is too long, right? Or are you using that same ad copy for cold audiences and warm audiences, right? So you fix the nuances. You don't replace everything. So we want to do this. So let's go back to the example. Let's say they're crushing the sales call, but the only thing that we're missing is how do I get more pay-in-fulls if you're selling coaching or service-based, really anything. How do I get more pay-in-fulls versus the pay plans we're getting? We're closing a lot of deals, but our cash collected is lower, right? So if you notice that happening, then instead of changing the entire sales call, because you're already winning, all we change is the question stacking within the collection part of your sales call. Because as you know, if you follow anything that, any of our trainings, anything like that, or you're a client of ours watching this, is that there are 7 key elements to a perfect sales call. I'm pretty sure I have another video of that on YouTube. Definitely, as we work with our private clients, it's in there. But you're going to be dealing with introduction. You're going to be dealing with rapport building, urgency, pain, diagnosis, offer, and collection. And through those 7 things, the last piece is collection. Okay? So if you're noticing you are closing deals, we don't need to really worry so much about the entire sales call as much as we need to worry about how we're positioning the pay-in-full opportunity. Okay? Because first of all, if you're not seeing it as an opportunity for the client to pay in full, that's the first miss. But again, that's mindset. Because you might think it's easier for them to just do a payment plan to get started, but in reality, the commitment level of somebody coming in on a pay-in-full option completely alters their mindset to take a certain amount of action. The same way, I'll use this in relationship, because sales and relationships and this stuff all goes hand in hand, because it comes down to commitment, right? Because that's what sales and enrollments are, is commitments to you. Throughout a sales call, you're making micro commitments. Okay, sales is a matter of just a compilation, a compound of commitments. Okay, so it's the same thing that if you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out in a relationship, you're not going to get a full commitment, and odds are the quality of that relationship is probably going to be watered down, right? So this is no different. Just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean it's at its max potential. Same thing with a client. Just because a client signed with you doesn't mean that they're playing to the service or playing to the game at their max potential, because they might be coming in with a mindset of, I don't really believe that this is for me, but I'm going to try it out. A pay in full shifts that mindset. Okay? So anyway, that's the next big thing. And let's get into the next one, number 4. So if you guys are getting any value out of this, let me know below in the comments. We're going over a lot of stuff here. Just let me know down below what your number 1 takeaway has been so far. Next one is attaching yourself to the outcome. So we see this happening a lot. And a big reason people attach themselves to the outcome is because they are afraid to lose a deal. They feel like they need the deal for finances, which is why they're afraid to lose it. They see the success of that conversation being the outcome, which is a closed deal. So when you're able to detach yourself from an outcome and you're not so much concerned with, am I going to get the credit card? That's the objective. You already know that. But you can't focus on the objective, because the same way you can't get to the moon without having an effective rocket with an effective pilot, with an effective team on the ground to help you if something blows up, or not blows up, but like goes wrong in the ship. You see how all those things play such intricate parts to landing on the moon? This is the same thing. You can't just focus on the end-all destination, which is getting the credit card. You need to focus on everything leading up to the credit card. So we have a saying in the sales agency: fall in love with the process and the process will be good to you. Okay, write that down, put it on a t-shirt, put it on your wall, whatever. But fall in love with the process and the process will be good to you. So don't attach yourself to the outcome as much as you attach yourself to the process and how well you can execute that process and diagnose and reflect on that process when you finish, which is reviewing your sales calls. So watching sales calls is like reviewing game tape, okay, with football players. Just because the Chiefs, who won the Super Bowl last year, were runner-ups the year before, and will win the Super Bowl this year, at the time of watching this video, it's 2020, they don't stop watching game tape because they won, right? That's a huge miss with sales pros, is not watching game, like the deals you close because you close them. So you think you won. The real win is to be able to uncover the nuances, right? And the gaps inside that sales call that occurred, right? Even though you won the deal. This is the same way if you're watching a football game. If somebody wins the Super Bowl, that doesn't mean that they did everything perfectly. That means they beat the other team. It's a big difference, right? So if I'm rewatching game tape and I'm the Kansas City Chiefs and I just won the Super Bowl, I'm looking for all the nuances in that process that could make us a sharper team. Did we cause any penalties on ourselves? Why did we cause those penalties? How do we avoid those penalties in the future, right? We got to the end zone in this amount of plays. Could we have done it in this amount of plays? Should we have ran down the clock, right? There's so many different things that you look at within that specific process to make you better. That's a big miss, is reviewing those calls. And that all comes down to attaching yourself to the outcome instead of attaching yourself to the love of the process and your ability to diagnose and dissect the process. If you get great at that, everything you want in life that you're playing this game for, whether it's the house, the girl, the guy, freedom, investments, whatever that is, that's all a byproduct to how well you execute the process. Okay? This is a big difference between dreamers and doers. All right? This is the difference. Okay? Dreamers always think about the outcome. Doers always think about the process. What is it going to take for me to achieve the outcome? And when you get so caught up in the process, what happens is everything you ever wanted in life ends up falling into your lap in abundance. It can't even keep up with you because you're so good at the actual process that all of your dreams end up being actually lower than your ability to execute. So now your dreams are doing everything they can to catch up to your ability to execute. That's what it looks like to be great at the process and to fall in love with the process rather than attaching yourself to the outcome. So I give you so much context with that because if I were to just say to you guys, don't attach yourself to the outcome, it's easier said than done. I'm giving you the context so you can understand and have the passion and fire and fury behind why being excellent at the actual process outweighs the outcome. That's why I gave you so much context. So let's keep going here. We have the last one actually for you here. And by the way, guys, if you have any questions, depending where you're watching this, Facebook group, YouTube, drop them below. I'll come back and answer them. But the last one is misplaced fear. Okay, this is one of the things holding back a lot of sales reps, right? Sales pros is misplaced fear. And they get a little bit nervous being on a sales call. They don't want to be on a sales call because they don't know what to say. They don't know how to react, because that's a big piece of it, right? It's not just what you do, but how you react to what's done to you. That's what makes leaders. So there's so many reasons why people have this misplaced fear. But what goes unrecognized is that your prospect has an equal, if not greater, amount of fear because they know what's coming next. They know that they're going to have to spend money to be able to get something done. And when you're dealing with an audience sometimes that maybe doesn't, or a prospect that doesn't have as much cash flow or money in the bank to be able to invest in you, whether that's like a non-tangible or a tangible offer, like mindset coaching, we run into that a lot with our clients. If they're in a market where they're just selling something non-tangible, like mindset coaching, and they realize that they have to make the correlation of their habits and behaviors and addictions attaching to all the other things in their life, family, money, happiness, etc. Right? Now, if you're selling an ROI offer, which we have a lot of clients that sell coaching programs, service-based industry, things of that nature, when you're running into that, it is going to be a matter of ROI, spending money. So there's different types of fears that your prospect is going to have. And those actually outweigh a lot of the time your fear. So here's how you handle this. You need to be able to change the way you look at fear. It doesn't go away. That's usually the biggest miss, is that people believe that they have to take their quote unquote flaws and eliminate them. But that's not what makes a human. Okay, we're not machines. You can't reprogram us to the extent of being able to permanently delete files. We're humans. So the ability to be able to comprehend that what you're feeling and your flaws and your memories don't disappear, and you can learn how to live alongside them, right, in harmony, to be able to work through them. Okay, so that's going to be the mission here, is not to be able to eliminate fear, but learn how to live alongside your fear and know it's there and it's not going anywhere, but that's a positive. Okay, you know, my daughter came, she was having a tough time going to sleep because she was scared of the dark. And she came into the living room and she said, Dad, I'm scared of the dark. You know, I don't want to go to bed yet. Can I come sleep in your bed? Now, the cop-out would have been, yes, you can come stay in my bed tonight, right? That would have been the cop-out. But if I want to help her evolve as a person, because she's 6 years old, if I want to help her evolve as a person, I need to help her learn how to understand the fear is not going anywhere, right? And now how do you handle that? So as I talk to her, we're talking about, first of all, we address that, hey, I hear you, right? Always acknowledge, agree, and reframe. So it works in every scenario. I'm telling you a real story that's happened the other night. And I said, hey, I totally get it, baby. It's okay. I just want you to know, like, what you're feeling right now, this fear of the dark, is totally normal. And you're not the only one. I sometimes have fear in the dark as well. Like, it's a totally normal thing, and you're not the only one experiencing this. So I just want you to know that. Like, you're not alone in what you're feeling. Would you like to hear about how I handle my fear of the dark? And then she said, yeah, I would. So I gave her that answer, right? Where I said, I think about all the happy stuff that goes on when I close my eyes, and it tends to overpower my fear of the dark because it's what I'm thinking about, and you become that. So, and then I asked her, you know, because you're looking for confirmation, validation on the new belief that you just instilled. And I asked her, like, does that make sense? Do you feel any better knowing that? She's like, yeah, it does. And I asked her, do you feel like you'd be able to sleep in your own room if you were able to do that? She's like, yeah, I could. And then she went to sleep in her own room. This is no different, right? Your fear, and the new angle you look at it is, I'm not scared of what I'm going to say or what I'm going to do in reaction. My biggest fear needs to be asking the hard questions, okay? Because if I just focus on asking hard questions, all those other fears are going to be overcome. I just need to be willing to ask hard questions, and everything else will be able to fall in place. Because at the end of the day, that's really the biggest miss is, well, outside of asking the right questions in the wrong direction on a sales call, is going to be asking the hard questions. Be able to challenge people. You know, if you're in a service-based industry and let's say you're selling leads, right? Oh, I've already done that stuff before. Facebook ads don't work, right? Or I've already done that before. I bought from these providers and they send me a whole bunch of leads and they suck, right? So you get that a lot from a service-based industry if you're selling like digital marketing or something like that. So your whole goal is to be able to ask the hard questions. So are you going to be done? Are you done with leads altogether? Their obvious answer is no, they can't be, right? So what is it about what were the deliverables you invested in, and how did they let you down? And as they go through all the things that let them down, these now become your leverage points, right? Or if they're struggling, they have no money, right? And they never have money. Let's say you're selling a coaching program. How long has that been a problem? What does that pattern look like? Can you see the pattern happening here? This has been a 3-year thing, right? Do you believe that you're falling into a similar pattern as a result of the addiction to X? Now, that's not just like drugs or something like obvious addictions. Like you can be addicted to poverty, right? Because of the safety that, you know, tends to come along with poverty, where you don't have to take big risks, which, just side note, the opportunity cost versus that obvious risk is far greater. So you have to look at these things, ask the hard questions to get them to level up their thinking. Okay, so realign where your fear should be placed. It's usually misplaced fear. Your client is just as nervous and fearful in the sales call as you are. So keep that in mind. Anyway, fam, so these are the 5 things that I notice a lot of the time outside of tactical stuff. This is typically like the higher level stuff that's happening that's slowing down or holding people up, introverts, extroverts, from being great sales pros. So I want you to consider that stuff. I have a lot of books here too. I'll probably do another video on which are my favorite books, why I read so much, things like that. But if you read a lot, keep in mind it's not a matter of how many books you read as much as it is the implementation of what you read. And the next thing is, you know, you're going to have a lot of books here. Just make sure that you're injecting what you learn, right? And not changing everything you do based on what you read or what you learn from a mentor. So that's what I would suggest. And if you're trying to figure out how many books do I read that will not lead to information overload, that comes down to the amount of information you can retain and the speed and how you read. And the reason I say that is because you want to read enough to inject the information. But I read 2 books a month. That's 24 books a year. That sounds like a lot, especially if people only read like 1 or 2 books a year. Here's why it's not. Okay, because the average book that you look at here, so let's say, I haven't read this one yet, but it looks like a thing to read. This is on my next list of things to read. So this is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. But this book right here is pretty typical in the terms of length. It's 281 pages long, right? So what I look at here is if I only read, I like to read 2 books at the same time to be able to help my mental bandwidth retain more. So if I read 10 pages in the morning of one book, doesn't sound like a lot anymore, right? 10 pages at night of another book, doesn't sound like much, right? Maybe 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how fast you read. You're talking about reading 2 books a month. This book only has 281 pages. So you'll finish this book in 28 days. You see how that works? So any book that's 300 pages, you can finish in a month by simply reading 30 minutes to an hour a day. This way you're reading enough to consume information you can implement, because it's not too much at once. Even really dense books like Slate of Mouth by Robert Dilts. That was an insanely dense book, and it talks about neurolinguistic programming and, you know, how to go really deep into understanding NLP. That was a really dense book. That took me a month, and that was a close read to being longer than that. Okay. So when it comes down to that, guys, you can still be able to read enough to implement and read a lot of books in a year by simply just reading 10 pages a day. You see how this is the same thing if you're trying to do $1 million in a year. Same concept. You're not trying to do $1 million a year. You're trying to do $83,000 a month, and then you break that down by day, and that's only roughly like $2,000-ish a day, which is maybe 1 or 2 sales a day. When you look at it that way, and you're closing at 20%, you really only need 4 to 5 sales calls per day to show up to be able to make $1 million a year. So do you see how simple that is when you actually reverse engineer what you need to get to your goal? Fall in love with the process, and the process will be good to you. So hope that was helpful, fam. We'll catch you on the next one. Drop any comments you have below. Come back and answer them and kick some ass this week.